In this month's Alive People, I'm taking a step back so that Cass Austria on my team can interview Michael Mojica, who's the founder of Deeply Understood, the art of feeling together, a somatic telepathic practice that uncovers the root of suffering. After growing up in a tough immigrant household where hiding emotions was a sign of strength, a personal heartbreak drove Mike to explore mind shifting practices, shamanic arts, and meditation to find true healing. Now he helps leaders and individuals build interest and honest connections with themselves and others so they can live a more fulfilled, connected lives. Before the interview, um, before the interview, here's some. Before the interview, update on events. This Saturday, 5:10, I'm in Newark for the Lumpia Fest. The 14th, I'm at Levi's Plaza in San Francisco. The 25th, Batok workshop in Petaluma. The 31st to June 1, Pagdiriwang in Seattle. So take it away, Cass. Enjoy the interview. Psst, I see alive people.
So, hello, Mr. Michael. It's good to see you.
Hey, Cassie.
Hello. How have you been?
Uh, Pretty good actually. Really busy. I'm trying to get the new year going. It's been already a couple months.
Okay, so start our interview proper. Uh, you mentioned that you're Filipino American, right?
Yeah, I'm Filipino. Born in the Philippines. I came here when I was one.
Oh, that's pretty
So
young. So, pretty much you grew up in the US, right?
yeah, pretty much. I remember a little bit about going back to the Philippines, but it's about it when I was younger. Haven't been back in a long time.
So, where are you from in the US?
Right now, I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, on the East Coast, from the Bay Area in California.
Okay, that's great. So, I'm curious, since you're Filipino, you were born there. I wonder where your family's from in the Philippines.
They're from Cavite, Maragondon specifically.
Mm.
Um, I think I didn't find out till later that that the family is rooted in the revolutionaries. Three brothers, Dio de los Riegos.
Mhm. Do you know any Filipino languages?
No. So when I was younger, I spoke Tagalog in English
Mhm.
kind of intermittently. Um, my grandmother was a school teacher, but I in kindergarten I was told later that I would speak Tagalog and English, and so they told my parents to only speak English to me. And then I had forgotten it. I don't know how to speak it anymore
Oh,
or
I
even
see that.
understand it. Yeah. So it was my mom regretted it doing it. My mom regretted listening to them.
Yeah, I understand that. So, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you, Mr. Michael?
Yeah, I'm 50.
Okay. So, um, growing up, what is like your memory of the Philippines, or what did your parents tell you about it, or Filipino family?
Yeah, I think the very first memory I have was we had this house. It was on a rice field that we owned, and the house was I forgot they call it, but it was an old house with the sticks. It's still on stilts, bamboo flooring, almost like a hut. And I remember being there and just with my grandmother and on the floor. And I just remember it. So this is probably when I came back from the U.S. to visit. But I remember but I had remembered that that was my home, and I saw pictures of me at the hut, and they would play a bingo with this shaker, and we would have fun playing bingo. But I remember that was, looking back, it didn't seem abnormal to me, but it was very humble beginnings. It
So,
was
how do
very
you,
farm.
yeah, how do
Yeah.
you like feel about that? Did you like, did it give you like an eye opening? Like,
Yeah. How do I feel about it? I mean, looking back at the time, like I said, it didn't seem so abnormal because I was so young. But looking back, just how much how my life could have been different had I been grown up in
Mhm.
the Philippines. I don't know what that would have been like. Um, I think on one level, like my mom's side, that was my mom's side, but my dad's side was, all the politicians in Mergondon. So I had I probably would have had a much easier life in the Philippines, just based on my family status. So that hut was like this, probably a good place for me to start. I don't think I would be such a I'd probably be a bit more I wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing today.
Okay,
I'd
so
probably be, yeah.
yeah,
I
so
think
with that in the topic, what do you do for work?
so I do emotional healing work, and I
Mm.
specialize in emotional intelligence, especially bringing it into corporate environments and helping their teams become more efficient by learning a special technique that I've created called the art of feeling together. And it's a really deep teamwork experience of rapport. And we're using not just a surface level of rapport, but using the biological essence of who we are. So, you know, given this audience, just more tribal sense, a sense of together. And so that is one thing that from the Philippines, being growing up Filipino, I had to figure out what my parents were saying and doing without me, without them talking to me. They had to, like, we do the, like all these nonverbal things, but also just our facial expressions. Like I knew when I was about to get in trouble or when things were open. And I think something about the Philippines is the culture was, and I'm not saying just for everybody, but especially for mine and the people I knew growing up, they would talk at me, not with me.
Mhm. That's
So
very
I had
true.
to, yeah, and so I think there's a very subservient servant culture. People pleasing becomes very socially accepted in the Philippines. So um, I forgot what the question was, but for me, it's what I do is going back to that and going, oh, I realized I never got to have this repetition of what do I want. And when somebody asked me what do I want, it used to be really hard. I had to think about what I thought they wanted me to hear. And when people are growing up, um, you know, they have this experience. Everything's normal. And so in my house, talking loud and yelling at each other was normal. Making fun of each other and having that banter was normal. And then, and I started to go into other, social groups, and I started to realize, oh, this isn't acceptable.
Different,
Like making
yeah.
fun of, yeah, like making fun of somebody, they actually get hurt and then they don't like me versus not understanding that me making fun of them means I like them.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so the work I do is not so much about what happened to you, but discovering the things that didn't happen to you that needed to happen. So, in other words, a trauma by omission. You don't get to speak about what you want. So somebody says, "What do you want?" And you don't realize how much that affects every part of your life, including business, especially, um, because you're going towards peace versus trying to create a transaction. And then since you're selfless, how do you translate selflessness into creating a business based upon value and selling value? And so when people get into entrepreneurship or even in corporate environments, they are always feeling like they're going to be in trouble because they, it's not everyone, but particular people that haven't had that experience of being asked, what do you want to eat, let alone like, how much do you want to eat?
Yeah. I
Just
understand
as
that.
an aside, yeah, as an aside, I was a skinny kid and they would pile the food on and I had to finish my plate or I couldn't leave because being skinny was looked frowned upon. But, not knowing anything about what you want in the world and trying to get into entrepreneurship, it was a big battle. And I didn't realize how
Mhm.
much I struggled in the beginning because I didn't know how to speak up for myself. So a lot of people struggle, procrastination, or they get scared. And they don't have someone to guide them through all the feelings that come with it. And mostly I come from a body-based perspective. It's not like we're going to talk about it and go there. I go straight to the body because that's a direct experience of what's happening here. When you go to the body, whether it's rational or not, it's going to stop you or propel you to go forward, whether you like it or not. And you're going to wonder why. And then, you know, in my family, it's like, what's wrong with you? Every time you did something wrong, that voice is going to come back in and go, what's wrong with you? I'm like, and nothing's wrong with me. My body's having a hard time and I didn't know how to speak about it. And I help people go through that process when they're really stuck, whether they're in relationships, their career, or or becoming an entrepreneur, which is really scary for a lot of people, including myself to this day. It's not for the meek, but if you have a big enough ambition, it's definitely well worth it. And so, one thing about entrepreneurship is you really find all the places that have held you back.
Mhm.
It really confronts you. A lot of your sense of identity comes up front, and if you don't know how to manage that or even recognize that it's not what happened to you or what didn't happen to you that's confusing you. And a lot of people fail, and they have big hearts, big ambitions, big dreams, and they don't have the environment to make it happen for someone to actually look and see like what they don't know about themselves that they do need to know. So
Yeah.
that's kind of long-worded way of saying I help people deal with their emotional anguish.
Okay, so I actually find that interesting because I graduated as a psychology major. So, it's not so much a traditional path when it comes to Filipinos, right? It's most of the time Filipinos are like healthcare workers, especially nurses. So I wonder, how did your business get to start? How did it get started? What motivated you? And like, what kind of challenges are you like experiencing or have experienced in the past in establishing this business?
It's a lot of questions there. Okay. So how did I get started? I definitely didn't think that I'd get into what I'm doing today. Um, I took a non-traditional route towards this. I didn't get a psych major. I didn't go to, a school that specializes in therapy work. So, um, I did a non-traditional route. So I started, um, in corporate and I was a project manager for about almost 10 years. And then I came across this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Um,
Mhm.
at the time, it was mind blowing for me. But now that I read, I'm like, oh, wow, this is very just surface level. It's like small talk of transformation. But he says something in the book that sticks out to me. It said, you know, if you want to make money, who are you getting the advice from? And I would always get listening to my parents about money and things like that. And then the book says, do they have what you want? And I said, I'm like, oh shoot, they don't actually have the type of money that I do want. And they're like, well, what? He goes on to say like, and why would you ask them for advice then? I'm like, oh, it was just like, yeah, it just made logical sense of this. I didn't know because um, I was such a child, I guess, in many ways. I didn't quite grow up, and this was in my late 20s at this point. So I didn't actually start growing up until then. I was still trying to figure out what my parents wanted, what my aunties wanted, what my cousins, my friends, and not figuring out what I wanted. And then when I read that book, I'm like, oh, it told me that you could change how you learn about things. Not you don't have to just say that this is just who I am. I wasn't born the right way. I wasn't born with the right parents. So you have to find your own mentors. And that was the part that's hit me in the face. I was like, you got to find my own mentors. And I'm like, I don't know anybody who's successful.
Mhm.
All I knew were like, I made it as a project manager, but I didn't know anybody who was an entrepreneur. And my clients were rich, but I didn't know them personally to be able to talk to them in a normal way, or so I thought at the time. In hindsight, I probably could have, but then I just started to like look and search and just fumble my way through trying to find a path for success as an entrepreneur. And then I ran into Anthony Robbins, and something about Anthony. And at the time, it was very powerful, but um, and it got me to the next level where I needed to be. I think Anthony Robbins is very good about um, overriding your emotional blocks, your wounding, your deficiencies, and it helps for a while until you can't be positive anymore.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it hits the part of like, okay, I can't be positive, and then there's that voice, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, oh well, nothing. You're just stuck, like, and you get to the nuances, and there's a sense of care, and like actually sitting there instead of trying to make you feel better. What if instead of trying to make you feel better, someone just sits in there, it's like, oh wow, this is really scary for you. You haven't made any money yet. You quit your job that was secure, and you told all your friends you got a business, and you probably feel embarrassed. Like, can we just sit with that together, not try to fix it? And um, that didn't happen for me. That I learned that later on. But so the Anthony Robbins things was my propulsion into transformation, where I'm like, okay, Red Rich Dad Poor Dad, it said you can transform. Anthony Robbins, awesome, gave me all this energy, made myself look better. But I didn't realize at the time that transformation is not a one weekend seminar. We didn't grow up that way. That's not the way our biology is built, our physiology. When you become an entrepreneur, you have to give yourself a lot of space, especially if you don't know anybody as an entrepreneur. Your body's not meant to transform that fast. Our nervous system has this thing with identity. If you start changing your identity, your nervous system doesn't have anything to feel safe in because change is difficult. It's kind of like lifting weights. You know, your muscle gets uncomfortable, it has to move. You try to work out the next day the same muscle, it'll damage it. And it takes time to build muscle. And our physiology, our neurology, our brain, the way we think, the way we do without thinking, our impulses take time to change. It's like one increment at a time. So if you're feeling um, shy, for example, that didn't happen overnight. That didn't happen in one event. There's just I forgot who said this phrase, but shyness is a death by a thousand paper cuts. And what I mean by that's every time that um, you wanted to go talk to somebody, somebody said you're doing it wrong, or maybe you're playing, and then all of a sudden you said something out of place, and then you get smacked or maybe yelled at. Those are all paper cuts, and your body stores all that. And then when you're about to like knock on the door and ask for like a sale, and you're wondering why you can't pick up the phone, and it's so scary just to pick up the phone and dial to make a call with the client, you're looking in the moment of like, why can't I do this? But you haven't seen everything that happened to you before you're an adult. And even when you're an adult, if you don't have anybody to help you look at the impulses that keep you from picking up that phone, um, you're gonna get stuck, and it's just gonna remind you that you suck.
Mhm.
And yeah, as a kid growing up, I think the two things was, as you said, um, my parents would have been incredibly proud if I was a mailman or a nurse
Mhm.
in the United States here. Those are the two things. Mailman or nurse was the thing growing up. And if you got that, like, wow, look at your cousin, look at your uncle, like they're a mailman, they're a nurse. And that was it. It was like low expectations. And not to say that they're not like good jobs, but there wasn't a lot of cultural immersion into this wonderful opportunity in the US. Is like you could become more than you ever thought you could. Um, so not went on a little rant there, but my main point is like, it's ideal to find a mentor, but the biggest thing I invite, let your curiosity be your mentor. Be curious about what other people are doing that you want to have, and figure out that they figured it out. Like, if they did it, it's possible. And maybe you don't know how they did it. Maybe you can't talk to that direct person, but keep searching. Get really curious about what it is that other people are doing that you didn't learn about. If you're want to do a YouTube video, and you get in front of the camera, and then all of a sudden you're talking and there's nobody there except the camera, and you can't talk. Find out what's going on in the body. Look up somatic awareness. Look up right brain psychotherapy. Don't look up, you could look up cognitive based therapy, but look at, like, why is your body stopping your, like, why did all of a sudden you lost your words? Like, you lost your ambition, you lost all your confidence because now you're talking to a camera. And what you don't know is it's really hard to talk to a camera because there's no one to mirror off of. Your right brain's like doing a lot of communication. Like, I'm looking at you, I'm seeing you nod, you're paying attention, you seem y- y- you seem to be taking it in. And not just on a cognitive level, I can see some of this stuff hit you emotionally. So we can pick up so much, and when that's gone, it's really hard to talk to something that doesn't reflect back to you. And as Filipinos, really good at empathy, really good.
Mhm.
Like, we can feel, we can sing, we yell at each other, and we understand the difference between one type of yelling and another kind of yelling. We have so much empathy, like, because of our, we listen to our bodies, and that is an understated intelligence. So follow the curiosity, follow the body, especially if you come from a lower income status. And if you're from a higher status, most of my clients are high achievers. They have a hard time feeling. Um, it's a different kind of suffering. They're not emotionally better off in most cases, actually even worse, because they can't feel themselves. They don't know what it's like to connect with somebody. They don't know what it feels like to have a place where no matter what, your family's going to take you in, regardless of, like,
Mhm.
how much money you make. So just be really curious about the body as your mentor, and see what your gut says. And don't trust your gut because it might have been, you know, trained with the stuff, but uh, just get curious about it. You can always call me up and ask me about it, but that's kind of, I'm just fascinated with the nonverbal communication mostly.
Yeah, actually, it's great advice what you just said, and I think like I took note of it. Like, let curiosity be your mentor, because as young people often get asked, "Who's your role model?" And sometimes it's hard to answer that question, you know. And
Mhm.
sometimes as young people, we're just curious, and you're right, it's our mentor. Curiosity is our
Yeah.
mentor.
Yeah.
So
What brought you to psychology?
actually, I don't know. At first, I didn't actually expected this path. At first, I wanted to be a nurse, very Filipino, and I plan on continuing my studies to become a doctor. But life didn't take me that way. So I said, hey, maybe psychology is a great thing because I do like talking to people. I like connecting with people. So here I am.
Mm-mm. Mm. Well, you said
Yeah.
something about connecting. Just what because connection was like different. Like, what does connection mean to you in regards to, like, did you have this sense of connection, realizing you love connection to people, or was it because of psychology that you realized you loved connection?
I think I like connecting with people in general in terms of different aspects. Maybe it be like a professional or socially, like we're friends platonically. I just love working with people, and yeah, it drew me to that path.
Yeah. And yeah, so that brings me to my other point. When you're looking for a mentor, um, uh, uh, talk to them like a normal person. Ask them, like, "Hey,
Mhm.
what's it been like?" Make a connection, and don't make a connection on, "Oh man, like, you're awesome. I want to be like you." And it's great, but yeah, I'm curious. Like, just like I asked you, like, what got you to psychology? Like, what was that like? We can, if it was a different context, I'd ask more questions, but asking like, yeah, what brought you here? Like, how did you get here? What's your story? And those are like simple ways to connect if you do want to find a mentor, or just, and ideally, I'll even go next level. Don't look for a mentor, look for a friend,
That's right.
right? Because a lot of my mentors are my friends. And not because I had any money, but because I knew how to connect. Um, yeah, it's just funny. I'm thinking about the hut and coming back, and uh, I have a lot of wealthy friends. I'm not as wealthy as them as nearly as much, but uh, because my interest, because of my hobby, which is personal development, transformation, and psychology and healing, which is now my vocation. I met people because of doing what I love to do. So if you want to get with the right people, do what you love. If you love business, do it. If it's not business that you love, like, you know, you might know because you don't want to go to seminars, you don't want to join groups, you don't want to talk about it all day. Um, but if you do love something, go there first, find that hobby, and there's always
Mhm.
going to be someone there that's doing pretty well for what you want to do. And also learn, like what you're saying, like fall in love with connection,
Mhm.
and not just an intellectual connection, a real emotional connection. Because people, it's so rare, um, especially now. It's like how to actually connect with somebody on a felt level, um, and if you are able to do that, you have lifelong friends at that point. You can be remembered. They may forget your name, but they're never going to forget the experience. And uh, i- if that was something I could have learned before, instead of trying to impress people, I would have gotten a lot further than where I'm at now. But connection, um, take the word mentorship, look for connection, talk to anybody like they're the most important person in the world. Don't make it not just a transactional thing, but just make it a way of your life. And you're going to run into people you don't even realize are exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually correct. Thank you for that. So, if we can move on. So, let's still on the topic of business, of course, as business owners. My family also owns a business, and so I can attest to that there are challenges, of course, that come with it. So, can you tell me a story about a failure or specifically like a challenge that you had to
Oh, yeah.
overcome? And
Yeah.
yeah.
After I read that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I immediately put in my, 1 month notice. And, I'd been with the company long enough, and they gave me a package to leave. And I got into this business. It was a direct mail business. It's called Money Mailer. And in the US, you would understand that the competitor is Valpak, which is a blue envelope. And you go to local businesses and they put coupons in there. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. And then I had a partner at the time, and she was the reason I did all this. And she was very ambitious, and she had opened up a real estate company at the same time. And then together we opened up a spa. So all within 2 years, we opened up 3 businesses. Long story short, we did really well, and then we didn't. Um, we had some business conflict, and I was left with about $10,000, and I had a in the house that was upside down, where I owed more money than I was worth. So I was in a world of hurt financially, and for the longest time, I was suffering, barely making any money at all in San Francisco, where the rent's really high, and I was living in a place that was like $700, and so to get a place in $700 in San Francisco at the time, uh, you can imagine what it was like. It was my own place, and it was not very nice. And I had hit this place where I didn't like myself. I just didn't like myself. And for 2.5 years, I had to struggle. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a college education. I didn't have enough. I didn't think I had enough money to start another business. And yes, I opened up 3 businesses, but I still didn't have enough confidence to start up another one, especially with no money. And then I got to this point where I literally had to borrow my mom's SUV and live in it. And this is like I was 30 years old at the time. And and so I hit just rock bottom at that point. But in the meantime, I had done all these workshops, these healing workshops, Anthony Robbins. I did emotional healing workshops, and these were like immersive year-long ones. So that's where all my money went. And um, so I had that type of support. I was still talking to people. People were still calling me. They knew my situation, but they would still call me because they wanted my support uh, to feel better. And um, and during that time, I had gone on a date with in San Francisco with this woman, and she was a dog walker. And I didn't think much of it, dog walking. And then we just ended up becoming friends. It didn't become romantic, but we became friends, and we would hang out. And every time I hung out with her, she's like, "Oh, I just bought a houseboat and stuff, and I'm about to buy this house." And I'm like, "You're a dog walker. How are you making all this money?" And then she says, "Well, I won't tell you how much I made, but I'll tell you what I reported." And she said something about like 160, $170,000, which is what she reported. So being she probably didn't report a lot more. But I was like, whoa, a dog walker. She had people working for her, but I I had that in the back of my mind. I didn't I never I had a dog, but I didn't take care of the dog. And so I decided, okay, I'm gonna become a dog walker. So this was like years later when I was living in my SUV. And this is like, Christian helped me out, um, and just kind of gave me the helped me get into the social media aspect and everything like that. And I created a website. I had to learn how to do a website myself because I couldn't afford to pay anybody to do it. And then I had to learn how to do dog walking. Literally, I'm taking 6 dogs at a time and off leash in the Berkeley Hills, and you're walking them for an hour off leash, and then you got to take them back. So I tried to do it myself, but then what I ended up doing was I found a really good company. I asked them, "Hey, I'd like to work for you. I don't know what to do." And they ended up training me. And then after a year, I stopped. Um, and then I started my own. And knowing all the stuff I knew from the direct mail, um, and how to actually get people to come to you versus try to find them. So direct mail, I had to go find people. But with the dog walking, I was like, okay, this is better because they're going to come to me. And so I had to learn about Google SEO and local marketing, Yelp, and all these things. And for a whole like 6 months, I had one client, and it was only giving me about $400 a month to make. So I was hurting pretty bad. So luckily, I had friends that helped out. But then all of a sudden, I did the website. I was going to these meetups. I was going to all these dog walking events, and I was also um, bumping up my SEO so that when people looked at Berkeley dog walkers, I would be showing up first. And then over a course of 6 months, I picked up 20 clients. And when you get these clients, they become weekly clients. And that's uh, 20 dogs, $30 each day, every walk. So it went from like zero to, oh my God, it was like the most rewarding thing ever. It was more rewarding than the money I made from real estate. It was just like this part, like, whoa. It wasn't just so much about the money. It was like during the times when I was down having to sit in my SUV, park somewhere because I had to conserve gas, that people were still calling me. And that was my wealth. That was a part, like, you can't take that away from me. Like, I learned enough about connection, about how to support, hold people, and be held as well. That's another part. Learn how to be supported. That's hard for people to do. I'm realizing that. But no, I've realized that many years ago. But that was the wealth. That was like, no matter what, even though the people knew my situation, they were still calling me because I had value to give. When you look at business, it's value. What's the value that you're creating to give that people want to pay money for? So, um, And just as an aside, I had a moment where I'll skip that part. But that was probably one of the hardest times of my life. Was a good 3 years of just feeling destitute.
Okay, that.
And look, yeah, good.
Sorry. I thought you were done. So you have stories of failure, of course, when it comes to your businesses. You mentioned that you have three failed businesses. Is that right? Was it three?
I have Yeah, I have three, about five.
That's a lot. So,
Yeah,
uh, what motivated you to like? What motivated you to keep going? Like, did you ever think about, hey, can I just like go back to my stable job back then? Become a project
yeah,
manager
yeah,
again.
yeah. Um, there's something about freedom. I had a friend of mine. He was in he was at KPMG, which is one of the big five accounting firms at the time, and he had quit, but he was dating someone who was in HR, and he said, "Hey, I can get you in as a consultant." And I was like, kind of like really tightened up. And then the thought of like, oh, means I have to dress up, I have to shave, cut my hair, like, I have to follow rules, and I was like, I'll think about it. And then another friend of mine was driving, and he knew I was struggling, and this is just right before I was gonna have to live out of the SUV. And he said to me, "Hey, so what's going on?" Like, well, I mean, my friend, our mutual friend, he told me about this job offer. And my friend's like, what's the hesitation? And I was thinking about it. And it was probably stupid at the time, but I'm glad I did. But he's like, well, what do you think? And it's like, well, I told him I'd rather be a barista than have to go back into corporate.
Mhm.
I don't want to follow rules right now. Like I've done it my own way, and I've done it for like at least, at that point, 7 years. And then somebody else said like, um, yeah, what does an artist do? Like, if you're an artist, you work as a barista so you can fund your passion. And that stuck with me. That's why I told him I'd rather be a barista, because I I want to pay for my freedom. I didn't end up being a barista. I just went for it, and I knew that the fundamentals would work. Have a good product, put yourself out there, and by that time, I knew how to do it. So you just have to trust the process. And I've failed enough times to know, okay, I know why I failed. Um, and I know that uh, this business actually works. There's not only my friend who had built her dog walking business, and I had all these other like examples of people become successful dog walkers. So it's like, okay, it can be done. There's a process. And I looked and I just researched and I just went down this rabbit hole. I had nothing else to do. So I literally put myself in the most uncomfortable position to have to get out. And in many ways, I do miss that hunger. I'm developing my consulting business now, and I'm not as hungry as I was then.
Mhm.
I have a family now, and I don't want to put myself in that position because I'm no longer the only person. So, if you're hungry enough, like, give yourself enough discomfort to get through. And most people are more motivated by fear than they are by reward. And what I mean by that is, if there was $1 million and you put it in a pile, so you'll get it. You'd probably get it. But if I put a blazing, 6 foot inferno of fire ring around it, I don't know how many people would try to jump through that fire to get that $1 million. So fear, don't be afraid of fear. Use it as your friend. People try to like, oh, I'm just going to overcome it or overcompensate with confidence, but use that fear to motivate you because your nervous system will kick into gear and you can ride it. Especially you're a procrastinator, ride that fear. You'll be the most productive person for several months. And then when you get to it, uh, try to find a better way to deal with procrastination. But fear, there's a lot of uses for it, and it can be very motivating. So, what motivated me? Uh, the desire for freedom and the fear of being desolate.
That's actually great. That's a great statement and a great take. A lot of starting people or people who are willing to be entrepreneurs are really just afraid, and that's what most people have. So we know that business, establishing a business can be physically demanding, emotionally even, and sometimes even like your social circle with your friends and family can be affected as well. So how do you balance life and also take care of yourself while also maintaining the business?
Mm, okay. So, something I haven't mentioned is a sense of purpose. So, before I had like this purpose of changing the world, making a difference. That's how I got into like really took on healing, consulting, and transformational work full time. Um, and it's great, but um, I have this particular um, purpose, and I think was much different than I ever thought I needed, which is to be a loving and healthy father. Um, and on the literal sense, father means good husband and everything like that, and then also a good father to your children. But also just the way I hold other people, or even people I don't know, and my clients, and it is my work. Just this is who I am. This is who I choose to be. And I won't get into it, but your identity is not solid. You get to choose who you want to be. You're an adult now. And hold that sense of purpose, hold that sense of integrity, hold those moral codes for yourself, pick them, live by them, and be unwavering. Do the right thing considering your morals. Don't take shortcuts. Um, that catches up to you on a psychological level. The paranoia, the fear, it will just get louder. So how do I take care of it? Is I take care of myself first and show up for my friends and family. And I take care of myself by letting my friends and family know when I'm having a hard time. Having the right people I can go and say, hey, I'm really angry right now. I want to hurt somebody, not literally, um, but to be able to have that level of like authenticity and just not have to hold back and be seen not as you're broken, but people just going, okay, like let's just have this share these feelings together. You're not broken. You're angry. Let's sit with that. Um, and you don't have to explain yourself, and you just get to be um, and people that can reflect back, so you actually feel seen in your successes, in your failures, in your loss and confusion, and so that you have someone to go to. So have great friends. Be a good friend by having great friends and having boundaries. Learn how to say no firmly without anger, and use anger only when necessary. And listen to your anger. Uh, have boundaries. Know when to say no. Let people be upset with you. Let people not like you. Don't try to fix it. You don't have to fight back. You don't have to act like it doesn't affect you. You might be hurt by it. Don't pretend it doesn't hurt either. Be really affected by life. Be affected by your own life. Like, don't shut down. And you will start to feel like the little things. Um, I just look for people, especially who can't help me. I look at their character. Like, what do they do when no one's looking? And I hold that to myself as like, okay, this is the stuff I do when no one's looking. And then I go talk to about it with a friend. Oh my God, I went on this binge of YouTube for 3 days, looking at crap, and even much worse. But I've, I've been so unproductive for the last 3 days. I just went down this dopamine hole. Help me.
That's actually very common, especially to like the younger ones.
Yeah, like help me. I can't get out of this freaking hole.
Yeah, that's so true. So you mentioned about like setting boundaries, learning how to say no. So which brings me to my curiosity of people pleasing qualities that usually we Filipinos have. So we
Hmm.
tend to conform to what our
Yeah.
parents want, what our society tells us. So did you grow up with that kind of quality? And if so, how did you grow out of it?
Um, I definitely grew up with that quality. It was I was bullied a lot by my cousins and stuff like that. So I had to make sure I knew what they needed to hear from me. I, you know, without knowing it at the time, just really good at reading facial expressions, as most people are, but they don't realize it. And I just knew how to make people hear what they wanted to hear. And your question, like, how did you grow out of it? I don't believe you can. I think it's a gift. I think it's something that's beautiful. That's not the part that's broken. There's nothing broken. It's actually quite a wonderful thing that kept you protected. It kept you safe. It kept you away from harm. It helped maybe even help you get things that you thought you couldn't get because because you just wanted it. Maybe you had to do it because you thought you didn't deserve it, so you had to make people like you. Um, so I don't think growing out of it is necessarily the thing. I think I see a lot of Instagram posts like shaming people pleasing, but shaming people please, there's an intelligence to it that's amazing. That's not the problem. The problem is, how do you treat yourself? Do you do things because you want to? Do you even know that you want to do it or that you shouldn't do it? Or are you just doing it automatically saying yes and you'd feel awful if you said no? Um, and never questioning that. Like maybe you do feel awful and say no, and you can still say no. Maybe you're afraid that your friend's going to leave you if you say no. Um, or maybe someone's going to yell at you, or maybe you're constantly going towards peace. Like all these things, like what are those things doing that keeps you from having maximizing what's fully good for you?
Mhm.
So I don't think you necessarily outgrow it. You just recognize the impulses. You recognize the places where it's just automatic without thinking, or you recognize that it's almost like dogmatic that like you have to. And especially when somebody doesn't do the same for you, and you get angry and indignant about it, it's a pretty good sign you're a people pleaser. And if you do, it's just like, yeah, I'm a people pleaser, and this person totally gets to say no to me. This person doesn't have to uh, buy me food or take turns buying food, and I don't have to buy food for everybody.
That's true. So you mentioned that people pleasing can be a gift, right?
Yeah, it is a gift. Yeah.
So so with that being said, is it a gift to you in terms of like establishing or building your business?
Yeah, it's a gift. It's a power actually. So something that's so the dark side of people pleasing is it's manipulative.
Mhm.
Um, you're trying to get someone to feel a certain way, and it helps me by knowing both sides of it. Am I doing it because I enjoy it, or am I doing it to feel safe? Am I trying to get this person to smile so I feel safe? Am I trying to get this person to leave me alone so I feel safe? Um, so the other part is when you get really good at people pleasing, people really like you.
Mhm.
They feel good around you, and when they feel, especially if you get really good at having people feel seen, heard, and understood in a way nobody else has, um, there's a connection that gets created that they may not have ever had before. And then all of a sudden they think it's about you, that you made them feel special. So the people pleasing can give you a sense of power because you think you're making people feel special. But the real power is to be able to let them come to that conclusion themselves. like, oh, I didn't put it there. You just see it all of a sudden. I had a friend of mine, and he's the nicest guy, and he's like so confident, but he constantly thinks he's not confident. And I was sitting on the couch with my wife, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm just feeling insecure." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I could get that you feel insecure, but from the outside, you seem confident." And he was just like, "Really?" And he asked my wife, like, "Yeah, like two people were having a completely different experience than him having himself." And it wasn't people pleasing. It was just like, "Wow, you don't come across that way." I was just like giving my subjective experience of, you just seem very confident. If you didn't tell me you're insecure, I would never have known. And he just had this moment of like cognitive dissonance, positive cognitive dissonance, where he had to like take in that someone's giving a subjective experience, and he trusts our opinion that was different from his. And so he was overcompensating for his insecurity, not realizing he's already coming across as confident. So it's not people pleasing, it's just sharing my subjective experience. Um, I'm not trying to say, oh no, like you shouldn't feel insecure. So that's people pleasing. Oh, you shouldn't feel insecure. But on the other end of it, it's like, no, but I do. Like if someone says you shouldn't feel secure, if I knew how, I would do it, right? Like, and then it invalidates another person. But if you just say, oh, it's as simple as just mirroring back what's being said. I'm having a hard time. I having a hard time. What's going on? So be curious. It goes back to the curiosity. Let curiosity follow versus trying to get someone to do something. Oh, I was expecting you to say yes. What had you say no?
Yeah, yeah.
Like those types of
Sorry.
questions. So people pleasing, the good thing about people pleasing is your ability to track another person's state. You'll be able to track, whether they're angry, upset, hurt. And with that, you can just reflect back, you seem hurt or you seem happy. So that's the superpower of it. The other part is, um, if you constantly use it, then you don't actually know how to ask anything directly. You think you have to trick people into giving you something. So how that translates back into the sales call, picking up the phone. Oh shoot, I got to make this person like me. I got to make this person like me. And a lot of pressure versus, hey, I've got something. I think it's really valuable. What do you think? Oh, tell me more. Like, why do you think it's not?
Mhm.
So just curiosity, being firm, direct, and saying no. Hey, can you help me paint my walls tomorrow? No, period. Don't explain it. Just to test it out. You might feel like a dick. You might feel like an asshole. You might feel like the worst person in the world. You might feel like a really bad kid. But people get to say no, and they don't have to explain it. And that can happen to you too. And if you can respect someone saying no, you'll be able to respect your own no's. So people pleasing without a no is manipulative.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's also important to set boundaries for ourselves and just say yes to the things that we can handle and the things that we want to do.
Yeah,
So
totally. And it goes back to, if you can't say no, how are you going to say no to 3 days of YouTube?
yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Because if you're
So
setting
you have to
boundaries
build,
to other
yeah,
people, you
you have
can
to
set
build it up.
boundaries to yourself.
Totally.
So I want to ask you about some of your defining moments. So was there like a defining moment or a specific moment when you realized that your business wasn't just about profit? Like, hey, I like money, but it's not always about money. And but like a representative of or like a representation or breaking stereotypes. Can you describe your experience?
Okay. This one's a little deeper. And this is probably within the last 5 years, actually. So, like I said, one of the things with psychology in our mental who we are. It's quite complex sometimes. We can't see ourselves so clearly. We don't know the rules that we've been given that we operate under. And one of my mentors, uh, he helped me out, and I was able to work at this camp called Sleepaway Camp. And Sleepaway Camp is a month long for young adults, 18 to 30 years old. And it was founded by two MIT graduates. They're both my friends. And one of them, he had his own show on the Discovery Channel. He had a robotics company. He has an art company. Everything he did was just amazingly like successful. Even other MIT friends of his are like, he's that guy that's just good at everything, and you get mad at him, but you love him at the same time. So he was amazing among amazing academics, but at the same time, he felt hollow and empty. And he created this sleepaway camp because this was the stuff that he wished he knew growing up. That was the whole premise. And then his business partner, she was also high achieving and coming from a different perspective. But they gave me an opportunity to facilitate for that month long. And so I was just feeling like overconfident. I got this. Fred, I worked with Jeff. He was one of the co-founders, and he had this interview set up where him, Kat, the other co-founder, and another head facilitator, Raven, was on the call with a Zoom call, and I was just going to demonstrate my facilitation skills. And I was practicing, and I've done a lot of one-on-one work, but I haven't done a lot of presentation work or facilitation work in a while. And so I get to the call, and all of a sudden the anxiety came in and it kicked in, and it was just I started like sweating, and it was like the first 5 minutes, and I fumbled my words, and I completely got lost, and I don't know how I got through the whole hour, but by the end of it, I was so embarrassed, and I was like, oh my god, I bombed this. This was like a gimme. It was almost like, here, take it, experience it, and I blew it. And I just got off the phone. I was like, and my friend's like, Michael, I don't know what to say. I mean, I've seen you hold rooms before. I don't know what happened here. And I was like, I don't know what happened either. So we get off the phone, and I'm like sitting there for hours going, oh my God, what the hell did I just do? And then my wife comes home, and she grew up here. Um, she's white. And so she has a different perspective of like what she can get. So she comes, and I'm like, oh my God, I blew it and all this stuff, disaster, not another chance. And then she goes, you can ask for another chance. I'm like, oh, no, you can't. It was the most terrifying thing. So I asked for another chance. And then I went back to my mentor who taught me the things I knew about facilitation and healing work. And he just, for 7 days straight, just kept talking to me and helping me practice how to do a good presentation. And I didn't have that growing up. I had to figure out how to do homework by myself. Nobody was sitting by my side teaching me how to do stuff. And then I was prepared. And I was actually going to have my mentor join, but then, someone said it's probably not a good idea to have him there. So I went by myself, and I nailed it. Just completely night and day. I was prepared. And they're like, wow, what does that feel like? And, I ended up being a facilitator for it. But as I talked to my mentor afterwards, to debrief, and he says, your problem is you think you're stupid, and you're fumbling with stupid, and you end up overcomplicating it, and you over explaining yourself and feeling you have to prove something. And you're fumbling around with stupid because at any given moment, someone's going to say you're stupid. And then your whole world's going to fall apart for 3 days. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's true. Like, one of the biggest fears is someone finds out that I'm stupid. And then there's that moment, I was like, oh, I'm smart. Like, I just learned things differently. And then from then, I started to develop a sense of my intelligence. And I found it hard to explain myself and talk about myself because I didn't see the world in a computational, mathematical way. I didn't think in like stacking intelligence and linear thinking. And then I ran into this ideal of systems thinking. And I think this is what artists are very good at. And I think Filipinos are very good at it. You just know something before you can say it. It's a gut instinct. and you can read the room, the vibe of the room. You can understand what somebody says before they finish their sentence. And they get mad at you because you keep cutting them off. But you just understand things so quickly because you see the whole picture. And if you're struggling to with your intelligence, it's most likely because you try to adapt your intelligence to the the intelligence that most people want you to go towards, which is the academic one. But see if you can. So the defining moment was understanding how I learned, how I think, uh, that it was unique, and not unique in that like people don't, but unique in the business world where it's algorithmic, computational, mathematical, and computational. And if it doesn't work for you, if you can't learn something, it's not because you can't figure it out. It's because your intelligence has to be adapted to a different way. So the defining moment was once I found that out, man, learning became fast. Complex subjects became fast. I started to look at Tibetan teachings, and I boiled down like three different lineages, and within like 5 months, and I was like, whoa. And talking to Tenzins and people with like high spiritual degrees, and they were like I was talking to them on a very high level of complexity and being able to make it simple. So the defining moment for me was to understand how I think and what my needs were to foster my thinking and learning. And that was in the last 5 years. I probably accomplished more in the last 5 years with this than I have ever like the 45 years before that. And it's not that you develop it. I realized because I pick up on things, I just didn't know how to talk about it.
Mhm.
So, and that's a defining moment for me. But there's been a lot of other ones that led to it. But that to me was the biggest one. Was I do think differently than other people, and that's probably why I barely graduated high school.
Okay, so would you say that uh a person needs to be like very interested in the field that they like want to take business on? Like for example, um do you have to be interested in beauty in order to establish a beauty business or something like that? How important is that to you?
To me, it's important to love what I'm doing,
Hmm.
but I don't think it's necessary. I do have another Christian, and I have another friend, and he loves money. He loves making money, and my wife loves making money. Um, I have another friend. He loves making money. Uh, I wish I had that sometimes. It would be a bit simpler. But uh, something that that makes you want to wake up in the morning, no matter, even if you didn't get paid, you'd want to wake up. Like, maybe you like to travel. Like, if that type of like, I can't wait to do this in the morning.
Hmm.
Just really fall in love with the process itself. So with my friends, they love making money. They're making a lot of money. I have a friend. He's making almost $1 million a year, working 6 months with food trucks. He doesn't love the business itself, but he does love making money and what it gives to him. So no, I don't think you need to necessarily love the business itself, but love the process, love the results, um, and learn about uh, the thing about money is delayed gratification. Love the experience of delayed gratification. It's the complete opposite of dopamine
Hmm. That's true.
experiences. Yeah. So if you can learn to be with delayed gratification, you'll make better decisions. You'll have more space for things to actually start to work out. You won't overcomplicate. You won't try to tweak things out when they're already working. And you'll give yourself enough better data to collect so that you make your business better, or even your life better, or even your relationships better. Like for example, maybe you said the wrong thing and you're embarrassed, and the person didn't text you back in 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's
But if you
actually
could,
true.
yeah. So, in other words, if you could manage your nervous system, uh, love your nervous system.
That's actually true. Delayed gratification is actually a great let's say mindset to have because like
Mhm.
We actually learned in psychology, in our psychology subject, that having too much dopamine can lead to addiction. That's why people are gamblers and
Yeah.
addicts or whatever. So my last business related question is that what's a skill outside of traditional business expertise that has unexpectedly helped you succeed as an entrepreneur?
I think for me, spiritual work.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, it doesn't have to be God or anything like that. I have a very loose definition of God. I grew up Catholic, but later on, it just didn't really quite fit what I believe about the world and existence itself. Um, so if I was going to say anything about it, develop a sense of beauty. Um, Especially because if you go through the ups and downs of business, things are going to get hard. And how you develop a sense of beauty is starting to get in touch with your feelings, your sensations, and your sensations are different than your emotions. Your feelings, literal just impulses, feelings like is it warm? Is it cold? Is it tight? Is it loose? Is it warm? I don't know, felt sense level. Most importantly, in your chest and belly. So if you develop a sense of that, um, then you might be able to fall in love with the process.
That's true. Okay, so that's actually it for my business related questions. So before I end, I wanted us to end on an intermission. So I'm gonna ask you just some random questions about you, about your Filipino heritage. So I want to ask you about your music taste. What music gets you along? Do you have any recommendations for me, for the audience who is watching?
My music. So I think one of the questions were about a playlist. I think I like a lot of music. I like I said, I'm a feeler. I love to feel
Mhm.
things. Um, uh, what I would say is learn to love music you don't love.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Right?
Broaden your
Break.
horizons.
Yeah, broaden your horizons. Not because of broadening your horizons, but also like learn how to see things and things you haven't seen before. You know, just as a translate, like, so for me, music's like, I like electronic music, I like country music, I like kalintong music, I love pop music, I love uh you know Appalachian music. I'm here in Appalachia. I just love music that I can feel, and also the culture around the music itself. I love partner
Mhm.
dancing. So which music do I like? It depends on when you ask me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so I want to ask, how do you identify yourself? More on Filipino, more on American, or is it just a mixture of both?
Um, to be honest, I forget I'm Filipino. Like I don't identify as Filipino all the time. Uh I just I'm so in the moment with somebody that unless they say I'm Filipino, then I'll remember I'm Filipino. I'm not denying, I'm not like, oh, I don't want to be Filipino. It's just like um it doesn't occur to me. And I think a lot of times, especially so as an aside, uh, I used to be a dating coach. So one of the things with Asian people is they overthink their identity as a race, and they go, "Oh, why don't people like me? Because you're insecure." Um, so uh, if you're constantly worried about how people perceive you, it's gonna show on a nonverbal way. And how to identify? I don't. I'm just very curious about what's happening in the moment. So presence puts you in that place. So if anything, I didn't mention being present. Um, at first I knew what that meant 20 years ago, 30 years ago when I first started this journey. But I'm like, oh, I had no idea what presence meant at the moment. But just to drop in and feel yourself first is presence, being very receptive, not trying to skip to the next question or trying to remember what was just said, but being in the moment. So if I was to identify myself in my best peak state is by the moment.
Okay, so lastly, so do you or your family cook traditional Filipino food? If so, can you tell me your favorite?
Yeah, I don't, unfortunately. But I love kare kare.
Mhm.
I grew up like every time my mom meets sinigang, she knew that was my favorite. Um, I used to love dinigwan, but it's just too rich now. And if the best Filipino restaurant I've ever been to is here in Asheville, North Carolina. It is not traditional. It's it's not fusion either. He makes like these beautiful dishes, um, but he makes it. It's not you're not gonna go there going, oh, this is gotta get it. It's like, but it doesn't. It reminds you of home, but
Mhm.
it's new. So it feels like Filipino food, but it's the most. It's like the balance and how exquisite he makes each taste is so unique. And it's here. It's like the most highly regarded restaurant here in the mountains of North Carolina. So no, I don't get to eat as much here, and it's expensive. But my mom, every time I go, you know, I know I can have it there.
Wow, that sounds good. Actually, kare kare is also one of my favorites. Sinigang,
Yeah.
dinuguan, you name it. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Michael, for giving us your time. And I learned a lot from you, actually. So thank you.
Oh, I forgot. So the restaurant's Neng Junior.
Oh, okay. So, guys,
Yeah,
if you're from North Carolina, like Mr. Michael is, you can visit that. I'm sure you would love Filipino food. So,
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you, Mr. Michael, for your
All
time
right. Thank you.
today. Thank
You
you.
too. Take care, Cassie.
Thank you. Bye bye now.